Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Jarvis, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 27 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one consulting services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, I didn't change this. We're learning about trademarks today. It's presented by the Virginia SBDC Network in collaboration with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Be sure to check out our next webinar in the series, Copyright Basics and Considerations for Entrepreneurs, on Tuesday, April 26th. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session. Jason Lott is the Attorney Advisor for Trademark Customer Outreach at the United States Patent and Trademark Office, where he specializes in helping small business owners understand trademarks and federal trademark registration process through live presentations, creative videos, and other multimedia platforms. He has been with the USPTO since 2000, previously serving as an examining attorney, and is a recipient of multiple career awards. Please join me in welcoming our presenter for today, Jason Lott.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the invitation to come and talk to you today. I'm going to share my screen and we will jump into the presentation. And there we go. All right. So, hey there, everyone. You know what? I'm gonna turn my video on real quick because I know sometimes people ask about that. So I don't know why people would want to see my face, but sometimes people do. So hey, folks. So my name is Jason Lott. I'm the Attorney Advisor for Trademarks Customer Outreach, and it is my job to teach you about trademarks, what they are, why they're important, and how the federal registration of your trademark can help you build your business. This is what today is going to look like. We're going to talk through what in the world a trademark actually is. We're going to talk about why you might want to register it with us, with the federal government. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about how to select or choose or create a strong trademark. And we're going to talk very briefly about filing and registration. I'm going to tell you a couple places to find help. And the most important part is answering your questions. So please, by all means, put them in the Q&A box, and I am happy to answer as many questions as I can before we run out of time today. So let's talk about, first and foremost, what a trademark actually is. Well, as you can see in your screen, this is kind of like the legal definition of what a trademark is. It's any word, symbol, design, or combination of these that does two things. It identifies the source of goods and services, and it distinguishes them from the goods and services of another party. So that's the kind of like legal way to think about it. But I think the most common way to think about it really is to think about a trademark in action, because we experience trademarks every single day. Somebody has estimated we might experience 10,000 trademarks every single day. And so the example that I like to give is, let's say you go into a restaurant, you sit down, the waiter comes over, says, "Would you like something to drink?" And you say, "Yes, I would love a Coke." And he says, "Is a Pepsi okay?" And that is a trademark in action. Coca-Cola is the brand that you are using to identify the source of the goods that you want. And Pepsi-Cola is the trademark that the waiter is using to identify the source of the goods that they actually provide and distinguish them from the goods that you had specifically asked for. That is a trademark in action. It is this symbol or word or slogan or something that identifies the source of very particular goods and services. And that relationship between the trademark itself and its underlying goods and services is incredibly important, because trademarks are always, always, always tied to very specific goods and services. For example, if I said Nike, what do you think of? Shoes. McDonald's, hamburgers. Levi's, jeans. Ford, trucks, right? So every single time you see or hear or think or experience a trademark, it automatically calls to mind very specific goods and services. And that's incredibly important, because without that relationship, it's not actually a trademark. And there are a lot of folks who have a common misconception about trademarks, and that if you, quote, trademark something, that means that you own it, right? That you own that word or you own that phrase and that nobody else can use it. You're the only one who can use it. And that's not actually true. If you think about Apple as a trademark, for example, Apple has registered the common word Apple as a brand name for computers and phones and earbuds and watches and stuff. But that doesn't mean that no one else can use the word Apple. I mean, lots of people can use the word Apple. You can talk about owning an Apple phone or going to the store and buying a piece of fruit called an apple, right? Apple doesn't own the word. However, Apple does have the exclusive right to use the word Apple as a brand name for their specific goods and services. So could they stop somebody else from using the word Apple for something? Maybe, maybe not. But I'll tell you what, if you developed your own sort of smartphone and you decided to brand it as an Apple, well, then Apple would be able to say, whoa, 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 that is our trademark. You're not allowed to use it. So I want you to think about that in terms of your own small business. What is the thing that you use to help you differentiate yourself from your competitors? Is there a particular brand name, slogan, or logo that you use that helps people identify you in the marketplace and realize, oh yeah, that's who I want, not that other guy. I want her, she's awesome. And I recognize it because of this trademark. So that's the important thing about trademarks. And that's really what it is. It is an indicator of source and it is legal protection for your brand. Now, you might notice I've been kind of throwing around the words goods and services. So just to be clear, technically, a trademark indicates the source of goods and a service mark indicates the source of services. But in reality, you don't have to worry about differentiating between a trademark and a service mark. You can just refer to something as a trademark or even a mark, and you're totally fine. So I want you to think about these traditional types of trademarks and specifically think about traditional types of trademarks in reference to your own business. So what you see on your screen here are various trademarks that have been registered by Coca-Cola. And the reason I want you to take a look at these is because they represent the three most common types of trademarks, which are brand names, slogans, and logos. And that's what we typically think of when we think about trademarks. So as you can see on your screen, they have registered different versions of their trademarks, and that is totally fine. You are more than welcome to apply to register different versions of your trademarks. You're not locked into one, and if you look up here, you're not necessarily looking at a brand, at a business name. You're not necessarily looking at a domain name. You are looking at other things, right? These are brand names, slogans, and logos. If you look up in the top left-hand corner there under the word mark, you see Coca-Cola. And that's because Coca-Cola has registered the wording Coca-Cola. And that means because they've registered it as a word mark, or technically it's referred to as a standard character format drawing, what they're saying is we would like protection for the wording itself. Not what it looks like, but for the wording itself. And that is incredibly broad protection, because it means that over the life of that trademark registration, they can use the wording Coca-Cola in whatever font style, size, or color they want to. They're not locked into their protection only being in a very specific format. It's very broad protection. They don't have to use the word Coca-Cola in Times New Roman font or however it is that it appears there. What they're saying is, we're not registering it in a particular font. We want to be able to use it in whatever one we want to. And the way that we at the USPTO sort of like signify that you've registered it this way is by it appearing sort of that way in the Times New Roman font on your trademark registration certificate. As you can see below there, it's the real thing. That's a slogan. They've registered that as well. Coca-Cola's registered lots of slogans over the years. Always Coca-Cola, open happiness. I'm sure you could probably come up with 2 or 3 that you might remember from your own life. So is it possible to register a slogan or a tagline, as they're sometimes called? Absolutely. Now, there are some wrinkles that come into play when you're trying to register a slogan, but nothing that can't be ironed out for the most part. So if you're thinking about your business, maybe you use a slogan in addition to a brand name, or maybe you only use a tagline. Hey, that's fine. You can absolutely apply to register those trademarks with our office. Now, the other things that you see there on your screen under stylized, composite, and design marks, those are technically called special form trademarks. And really what they are sort of more narrow, perhaps, versions of trademarks. Top right-hand corner there, Coca-Cola registering that in their in their distinctive font. So they want to protect Coca-Cola in their very specific font style because that's important to them, right? They've been using it over 100 years, 120, 140 years, whatever it is, 18, whatever, 80s, whenever it came out, Coca-Cola first came out, right? So they've been using it for a very long time. They like to play on that nostalgia. Cool. They can do that. They can protect their trademark in that particular font if they want to. Now, some of you might point out, Jason, why would they? Didn't you just say that they have it registered in the standard character format, that word mark? And doesn't that mean that they can put it in whatever font style they want to? Yeah, that's exactly right. But Coca-Cola has decided that they also want to protect kind of what it looks like, not just the wording alone, but also what it looks like. And that might help them go against infringers who are using different wording in a similar font for soft drinks or something like that. Yeah, you could absolutely do that. If the stylization or the drawing is important to you, you can, as I've said, you can absolutely submit an application to try and register that version. If you look in the bottom left corner, that's a composite mark. It's a combination of wording in a design, or it could just be the design alone without any wording. Totally fine. You can absolutely apply to register all those different versions of your trademarks. So I want you to start thinking about this with regard to your own trademarks. It's not just a brand name or it's not just a logo. You are welcome to apply to register different versions of those things. And the one thing I will point out here, everything here is done in color, but you are not required to submit your application in color. All right. You could, if you wanted to, submit black and white versions of your drawings of what your logo looks like or what your stylized trademark looks like. And the reason I bring that up is because if you register your trademark in color, you're kind of locked into the protection being in that color, but not so if you submit it in black and white. A black and white version of your trademark indicates to the USPTO, hey, I'm not claiming any color. I want to be able to use this in whatever color I want to over the life of the trademark registration. And we'll say, cool, that's great, good for you, all right? So you're not locked into your trademark always appearing in red. If you wanted to, you could have it appear in purple or pink or orange or green or whatever was color happened to speak to you that day. So that's one thing to think about, especially as a small business owner. You might not have a whole lot of money that you have to throw towards trademark registration. So if that's you, I would recommend one of two things, okay? And this is not legal advice because I'm not allowed to give you legal advice. However, I can tell you that in all my years working with various business owners, what I have seen is most of the time, folks would either submit the word mark application to protect that standard character version of their wording, so they have this broad scope of protection. Or if they want to submit a version of their trademark that they use, and it has some sort of stylization or design element in it, they submit their drawing of that trademark in black and white, not in color, because again, it gives them more flexibility. So the other thing that I want you to think about, though, with regard to what a trademark actually is to make sure you're expanding your mind to understand that pretty much anything can be a trademark so long as it indicates source. So if you look there in the first bullet for sound, so now I'm not a good singer, okay, but some of you might recognize bum, bum, bum. That's the NBC chimes. And so NBC has registered those three notes on chimes. And when you hear that, you think, oh yeah, that's an NBC broadcast. Color can also be registered as a trademark. If any of you have seen pink fiberglass insulation put into a home or a building or something like that, that pink color is actually a registered trademark of Owens Corning. So when you see that pink insulation, you know exactly whose that is. Think about a jewelry box that's in a very specific shade of blue. We sometimes refer to it as a Tiffany blue. And that blue color, Tiffany has registered as a trademark. Probably one that we recognize most often would be a brown panel truck that is driving down your street and the delivery person in a brown uniform. Yeah, that's right. When you see that, you know it's UPS. And they have registered the color brown when it is used on the sides of their trucks or on their uniforms, things like that, to indicate the source of their, parcel delivery services. Also think about configuration and shape. If you walk into a convenience store and you look in the refrigerated case and you see a bottle that's shaped kind of like that and it's filled with a brown liquid, you're like, Coca-Cola, right? You recognize that it's a Coca-Cola because of the distinctive contour bottle shape. And that has been registered as a trademark by Coca-Cola because we as consumers, when we see it, when we experience it, we automatically recognize it as being a Coca-Cola soft drink. So I say all that not because you have to have one of these, you do not, but who knows, you might. And I want you to be thinking about all the different ways that consumers do recognize you in the marketplace. What is the thing that you use to help your customers recognize you and differentiate you from your competitor? And sometimes you might want to think about it in reverse. What are the things that customers are using to recognize you in the marketplace? Maybe it's the fact that you always use a certain color combination on the packaging for your goods. Or maybe it's because you have this, tagline that you use all the time and people recognize you because of that. Well, hey, that's great. Those sorts of things can be considered trademarks, and they're the types of things that could be registered with our office. So let's talk about registration at our office. I want you to be aware that there are basically two ways there's more than that, but the two main ways that trademark rights are often protected or created is through common law and through federal registration. And I'm going to talk you through what both of those mean, because there is a difference, and common law is not necessarily a phrase that's heard all that often. So common law trademark rights are rights that are created as soon as you begin to use something as a trademark. That's it, okay? That's what you got to do. You got to start using something as a trademark, and you are going to begin to create rights in that trademark. That's because here in the United States, trademark rights are based upon use. There are other countries where they're based on a first-to-file system. Our system is based on your trademark rights being created when you begin to use something. Now, the thing about common law trademark rights, however, is that they are limited to the state or commonwealth or territory in which you live, in which you are operating. So your trademark rights are going to be limited to that geographic area. And that's fine, especially if you're just starting out. Maybe you only have a small area that you're kind of covering, but that can become a problem as your business begins to grow and change. And all of a sudden you want to be operating in DC or in Maryland, or maybe in Pennsylvania or West Virginia. Okay, so you need to start thinking about, how am I going to protect myself outside of my state? Because common law trademarks are created under state law or Commonwealth law. As you can see at the bottom of your screen, if you are using something as a trademark, you are more than welcome to use the little TM or use the little SM after your trademark. TM stands for trademark, SM stands for service mark. Again, you don't necessarily have to use SM in order for something to be valid. You could just use TM, okay? And that's totally fine, even if you're providing a service. There is no real rule about where the TM or the SM goes, like around your trademark, or what the font is or what the size is. As long as you're putting that TM or that SM after your trademark, you're putting people on notice that it is your trademark, and you're saying, hey, this is my trademark. I am using it to indicate the source of my particular goods and services. Don't use it, okay? That's what the TM and the SM are really for. And as you can see there, you are not allowed to use the R in the circle symbol. That is a symbol that indicates you have registered your trademark with us, with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So as you can see there, the limitation is based upon geographic area, right? So if you're only going to be using it on the George Mason campus, for example, well, then guess what? Your rights are only going to be kind of in that area, right? And then, but what is going to happen when you want to expand? Your trademark rights are not going to necessarily be protected in other places. And certainly if you're expanding across state lines and all of a sudden you become really popular and then somebody out in California hears about it and they think that's a great idea, right? So what are you going to do in that circumstance? Well, this is why we recommend you might want to consider registering your trademark with us. with the federal government. Because unlike rights that are created when you begin to use something and they're created for that geographic area in which you're operating, federal registration rights are created when you register with us, and those are nationwide rights. It creates this legal presumption that you are the owner of the trademark and that you have the right to use it throughout the United States and its territories. So unlike under common law rights where you're going to have to prove, no, judge, this is my trademark. I've been using it since, 1976 or whatever. Not so. If you have a registration, you can say, here, judge, here's my registration certificate. And that's prima facie evidence that you are the owner of that trademark and that you have the right to use it, not somebody else. You are putting the public, the entire nationwide public, on constructive notice that it is your trademark. That's what happens when you register with us. That's great, because you want to be able to say, look, no, folks were on notice. This is my trademark. They should have known better, right? You can bring a legal action concerning your trademark in federal court. So let's say you have your federal registration, you've been using your trademark, across state lines and things like that. And somebody starts to use a similar trademark and they're starting to infringe on your trademark rights. Well, instead of having to go there and sue that person in state court to get them to stop, instead, what you can do is rely upon your federal registration. And so you can go to the federal courthouse nearest you and sue that person and make them come to you in order to defend. So it's a really sort of, it creates more efficiency perhaps for you. And it's going to be less costly for you and your lawyer to sue someone if they happen to be infringing on your trademark rights. You can also record your registration with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So this is great if you're in an industry where there are lots of counterfeit goods that are coming into the country. Think electronics and software and clothing and footwear, personal protective equipment there for a while, maybe still is, I don't know, there were counterfeit goods coming in. And so CBP is tasked with stopping those goods from coming into the country. So if you record your registration with them, you're going to be able to help the agents to stop those counterfeit goods at the borders and at the ports and things of that sort. You can also use your registration as a basis for filing in another country. So remember, trademark rights are country-based. So much in the same way that US law doesn't apply in other countries, for, I don't know, speed limits or taxes or whatever it happens to be. Same thing is true with trademark rights. Every country has their own trademark sort of like protection, mechanism. So if you want to protect your trademark in another country, you need to file there and register your trademark in those other countries. So that can be pretty time consuming, can also be pretty expensive. So there is a mechanism that is in place that allows you to extend protection from the United States to other countries. And that's if you have an application or a registration here in the United States. Now, I don't want to oversell this, okay? It is still going to cost you money because you have to pay our fees, you have to pay fees to them. A World Intellectual Property organization, you're going to have to pay whatever fees are required by each of the countries, because what you're doing is essentially creating a new application in any country that you want to have protection in. So it's not super cheap, okay? But it is a way for you to extend protection if that is something that is important to you as your business begins to grow and expand. And you're not just based around the George Mason campus, but instead have become this big international conglomerate, right? You want to have your trademark protection in every single country in the world, or at least as many as you can get to. Oh, and also, as you can see there, you can finally start using the R in the circle symbol. So once you register, you can use the little R in the circle. Again, no particular font, no particular size, no particular placement is required. But at this point, you no longer need to use the TM or the SM. Instead, you replace it with the little R in the circle. All right, so we've talked about what a trademark is. We've talked about why you might want to register that trademark with us. Let's talk about how to select or choose or create a strong trademark. Now, as you can see, it is our mission to register trademarks. We want to register trademarks. We would love to be able to register your trademark. However, we cannot. There are some things, there's an examination process that takes place. And so sometimes it becomes apparent that a trademark is not eligible for registration. And so our trademark examining attorneys are making that determination on whether your application, your trademark, is allowed to register with us. So as much as we would love to be able to register every single trademark that comes in the door, we cannot. So there's always this decision that is being made, this examination that is being done. And so that means not every trademark is registrable. And this is the other thing to think about too. Even if you do register your trademark with us, that doesn't mean that it's actually enforceable. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that, because that seems a little weird, right? You spent all this time and effort to register your trademark with us. Are you telling me, Jason, I now cannot enforce my trademark? Well, maybe. And the reason is we at the USPTO, our mission and our primary focus is on determining whether you have the right to register your trademark, not whether you have the right to use your trademark. And so that means that our analysis is really about whether you can register with us and not about whether there's anybody else out there that might also have trademark rights. Because remember, there are those things called common law trademark rights. And those rights can be raised up throughout the United States. You don't ever, ever, ever have to register your trademark with us. You could, if you wanted to, go your entire business life and only rely on common law trademark rights. And so that means, let's say you get a registration for something and you weren't aware that there was somebody else out there who had stronger trademark rights. They just never got around to registering them. So that person might be able to stop you from enforcing your trademark rights. Real quick example, let's assume as a total hypothetical that Levi's never got around to registering Levi's as a brand name for jeans. Okay, and you happen to be a blue jeans manufacturer and you happen to look at our database and say, Levi's is not registered as a trademark. Therefore, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply to register Levi's as a trademark for my blue jeans. Oh man, I'm going to blow them out of the market. Well, guess what? Nope. You might be able to get a registration for Levi's or blue jeans if they've never applied for it. However, once you get that registration, what do you think Levi's is going to do? Yeah, they're going to stop you from being able to actually enforce your trademark rights, because they would have, let's say, common law trademark rights since 1873 or whatever it happens to be. All right. So obviously it's not the case. Levi's has lots of registered trademarks. I'm in no way suggesting you should try and register Levi's. However, I just do it as an example for you to understand that there is always a potential that there could be somebody else out there who's using a same or similar trademark to yours with related goods and services. And that's why it's incredibly important to understand when you are first creating or choosing or building your trademark for your business, that you want to make sure it is both federally registrable and legally protectable. And so the two things that I want to talk about should hopefully go a long way towards making sure that your trademark is going to be registrable and protectable. And as you can see, those two concepts are likelihood of confusion and strength of the trademark. So let me talk you through both of them one by one. So likelihood of confusion, you sometimes hear about it, people kind of talk about it as trademark infringement. Oh, that's infringing on my trademark rights. But really what they're talking about is the fact that consumers are likely to be confused when they encounter both of those trademarks in the marketplace. You know, there are these similarities between them, and the consumer's like, I think that's the same one, but I'm not sure, right? That's what's really happening here, is this likelihood of confusion in the marketplace. And the analysis for determining whether there's a likelihood of confusion is a bit more complex than what you see on the screen, but a lot of it boils down to these two things. Are the trademarks themselves confusingly similar? And in addition, are the goods and services used with those trademarks related? Because remember, trademarks are always, always, always tied to very specific goods and services. Okay, so what you're doing here, and when you're trying to figure out whether or not it's likely to confuse, you are going to be looking at two things: the trademarks themselves and also the goods and services used with those trademarks. So when we're talking about similarity, it is not identical. Okay, it's not about whether something is identical or not. It's, well, do they sound alike? Do they look alike? Do they have a similar meaning? Do they have a similar commercial impression? Those are the things we're talking about when we're trying to determine whether two trademarks are confusingly similar. And if the answer to that is yes, Coca-Cola spelled with C's is confusingly similar to Coca-Cola spelled with Q's. Okay, they sound similar, if not the same, when you say them out loud. And so if the answer to the first part of that question is yes, those trademarks are confusingly similar, then we move on to the second part. Are the goods and services related? And what that means is, does one company typically provide both types of goods? Or does one company typically provide both types of services? And if so, then we as consumers are probably going to be confused when we encounter that in the marketplace. So for relatedness, as I said, it's not identical, it's related. So think about a clothing company, for example, right? What all do they make? Well, they make all kinds of different clothes, right? So if I wanted to register Coca-Cola, I'm Coca-Cola, say, and I wanted to register Coca-Cola for shirts, and you wanted to register Coca-Cola for pants, would that be a problem? Yeah, probably, right? Because the trademarks are confusingly similar, and pants are related. Shirts are related to pants. And so consumers are used to seeing, Coca-Cola, yeah, Coca, yeah. So they're probably going to be confused. That's what a likelihood of confusion is. And the reason it's so important that you understand that is because if your trademark is likely to cause confusion with somebody else's, it will be refused registration at our office. So when you apply to register, the examining attorney is going to look at your application and also look in our database to see, is there another application or registration for a same or similar trademark for related goods and services? And if so, your trademark will be refused registration. If not, yours might move on to registration. So because the examining attorney is going to be looking in our database, and that's where they're going to be looking there to make that determination, we always recommend that you look in the database first before you file. All right? Because if you can find a conflicting trademark in our database, that might stop you from actually filing. You might be able to save yourself a couple $100, and you can certainly save yourself time and effort. You might decide, oh, there is no way I'm going to be able to register this trademark. I might want to think about developing a new or different trademark. So this is what is referred to as clearance searching. You want to clear the area around your trademark to make sure you're not infringing on anybody else's rights. And the simple way to do a clearance search is to look in our database. Okay, it's totally free. It's available 24/7. It's not the easiest thing to search in the world. Some of you might have already experienced it. So it takes a little time to get used to, but you are welcome to use it. And I will just put in a plug right now. If you're not doing anything in about an hour and a half, and you want to learn more about how to search in our database in the using the Trademark Electronic Search System, I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about our Trademark Basics Bootcamp. I'm doing a presentation at 2 p.m. Eastern, and it's free. You're totally welcome to come and join and learn about the searching mechanics of how to search in our database. Okay, just a quick shameless plug. Okay, so we recommend you look in our database before you file, and you also look online. So look in Google, using Google or Bing or Yahoo or DuckDuckGo. You want to look to see, is anybody else out there using a same or similar trademark for related goods and services? That's a very simple version of the clearance search. We also recommend that you might want to think about working with a private trademark attorney, somebody who's an experienced practitioner, because that attorney is going to be able to do a full comprehensive clearance search for you. Not just looking in our database and looking online, but looking in state trademark databases, foreign databases, all sorts of other resources that would be too numerous to list here. So that's what we recommend, because we don't want you to be in a situation where you apply to register something and like, no, there is literally the exact same thing in our database. We cannot allow you to register. Well, we don't want that to happen. We don't want to have to refuse your trademark, and you clearly wouldn't want that to happen. So that's why we always recommend you either do it yourself or you work with an attorney before you file to look and see, is there anybody else out there using the same or similar mark for related goods and services? All right, that's the likelihood of confusion issue. You want to avoid that because that's going to help you be able to register with us. And it's also going to help you with being able to enforce your trademark as well, because you're already aware of what other competitors might be out there. So the other thing that I want you to think about is the strength of your trademark. There's something that's referred to as the descriptiveness spectrum, but I like to think about it as a temperature gauge that goes from weak to strong or cold to hot. And you want your trademark to be on the hot end, okay? You want it to be a strong trademark, like a fanciful or an arbitrary or a suggestive trademark. That's where you get more protection for your trademark. So let me tell you what I mean by those. So fanciful trademarks are essentially made up words. That's what they are. They have no meaning in English or in any other language. They're just like a made up thing. Think Xerox for photocopiers, or Kodak for cameras, or Kleenex for tissues, or Exxon for petroleum. Those are all made up words. Now, we as consumers, when we hear them, we automatically think Xerox, photocopiers, Kodak, cameras, right? Kleenex, tissues, right? Because we have built that association because the brands have done a good job of associating. When you hear this weird word, think blah, okay? So that can happen over time, but when those brands first came out, those trademarks had no meaning. So it made them actually very strong. They are inherently distinctive trademarks. And that's also going to help you a little bit too when you apply to register. Chances are there probably won't be anybody in our database who also has that fanciful trademark that you've come up with because it's a made up word, right? So chances are less that someone is going to have something that's very similar. So that also decreases the chances that you'll be refused registration based upon a likelihood of confusion. Now, another very strong type of trademark is an arbitrary trademark. And these are words that have meaning in English or in another language, but that wording has no relationship to the underlying good or service. So think Apple for computers, or Gap for clothing, or BlackBerry for a mobile device. Yes, we know what an Apple is, we know what a BlackBerry is, we know what a Gap is, but that wording has no relationship to the underlying good or service. These also are inherently distinctive trademarks. They're also incredibly strong trademarks. So think about your trademark, what you have been using, or maybe you're coming up with a trademark that you want to use. Try and figure out, is it fanciful? Is it arbitrary? Maybe it's suggestive. So suggestive trademarks are marks that suggest something about the underlying good or service, but don't exactly describe it. So if you see the example on your screen there for Coppertone, for suntan lotion, so it suggests that if you apply the lotion to your skin and then you go out into the sun, your skin will take on a coppery tone. All right, that is taking some mental steps, some mental leaps even, to get you between the trademark and the underlying good, in this case, suntan lotion. Right, so it suggests something about suntan lotion, but it doesn't exactly describe it. And that's fine. That also makes it an inherently distinctive trademark and also has a good scope of protection. Maybe not as wide as fanciful and arbitrary trademarks, but it still has a pretty good scope of protection. Now, as we move down the temperature gauge into our weaker sorts of trademarks, we're getting into stuff that's descriptive. Technically, descriptive trademarks are not registrable at our office on the principal register. There are two registers, the principal and the supplemental. The principal is the one that you want to be on, okay? That's where you get all of those great rights that I talked about earlier that you get with federal registration. On the supplemental register, you don't have access to all of them. You want to be on the principal, okay? But if you have a descriptive trademark, you're going to be refused registration on the principal register. And the reason is because the trademark is merely describing the goods or describing something about the goods or the services. And so that means it's not really functioning as a trademark. What does a trademark do? A trademark indicates source, right? If it is just merely describing the goods, it's not indicating the source of the goods, it's just telling you what the things are. So that wording is not functioning as a trademark. It is not indicating source. If you see the example there for Creamy Whip, that's just telling you it's whip and it's creamy. All right. It is not telling you who, helping you determine who the manufacturer is or something like that. Now, in this case, Creamy Whip is actually a registered trademark because it is possible to overcome that refusal in certain circumstances. And that's what has happened here. But it takes some work in order to actually register a descriptive trademark on the principal register. It's going to take use in interstate commerce, and it's going to take time. All right. So this is not something you can quickly and easily do. Okay. So there's not a whole, when you start thinking about descriptive trademarks, there perhaps isn't as much of a scope of protection for those. And that's because a lot of people use trademarks that are like kind of descriptive. Okay. And so it's harder as a consumer for us to differentiate between trademarks that are like kind of describing what the thing is, and there's only like minor differences between them. Right. Now, it's easy for us to differentiate between fanciful trademarks, arbitrary, suggestive trademarks. Right. But it's a smaller scope of protection when you're like trying to determine, oh, I guess that's creamed whip, and that's whipping and creamy, and like, I don't, like whatever, I don't know, so they're like all these sort of words are kind of similar. It's harder for it to function as a trademark. Okay. So that means it's also a lower or lesser scope of protection. So the things down at the bottom there, that's the freezing cold part of the temperature. Those aren't even trademarks at all. Generic words like milk as a brand name for a dairy-based beverage, nope, never going to happen, right? Because it's not indicating source, it's just telling you what the thing is, right? You think about those generic boxes of cereal you used to see in the grocery store and stuff like that, cereal, corn puffs or whatever, I don't know, that might be a trademark. Anyway, whatever. Okay. So you would see, see the word written on the thing. It was a white box, right, with black label. That's generic, right? So that's not functioning as a trademark. It's just telling you what the thing is that's in the box, right? So because that's not functioning as a trademark, it's not going to be registrable. Bicycle as a brand name for bicycles, not going to happen. However, bicycle as a brand name for playing cards, yes, because that is an arbitrary use of that wording, and therefore it could be registered as a trademark. All right. So I want you to think about your trademark. Okay. What you're using, what you're thinking about using, what you're in the process of developing as you're working with your graphic designer or whatever the case may be. Try and determine where your trademark might fall on that spectrum of cold to hot. Remember, you want it to be on the hot range of things. Okay, so we know what a trademark is. We know why you'd want to register it. We know some good tips, perhaps, about how to select or choose a strong trademark. I'm going to move very quickly through this section and the help section because I want to get to your questions. But just in brief, in order to apply to register your trademark with us, you create a USPTO.gov account, and then you file using the Trademark Electronic Application System called TEAS, T-E-A-S. We currently have two flavors, as I like to think of them, of TEAS for your filing pleasure, and the TEAS Plus and TEAS Standard. So people often ask, how much is it going to cost? Right? Well, the standard filing fee is $350 per international class. And I'll explain international class in just a second. However, I want to point out that as you can see on your screen, we do offer a discount if you're willing to use the TEAS Plus flavor. All right. And the reason is we are trying to encourage efficiency. In a TEAS Plus application, you are front loading everything into the application. And that's important because you're going to have to turn it in anyway. And so by putting everything in at the very beginning, that means that the examining attorney who is assigned to examine your application isn't going to have to chase you down. Hey, you got to send in the thing. And what about this over here? And you forgot about this thing. Nope, it's all there. All right. And the examining attorney can go check, check, check. Everything's looking good. Let's move you ahead. All right. So, and we often see that TEAS Plus applications move more quickly through the system and get to final disposition quicker. So, in order to encourage you to file using TEAS Plus, we give you a discount of $100 off per international class. So be aware, if you end up not meeting those filing requirements, though, you will then have to pay the extra $100 if you want to continue your application through the process. So just kind of something to keep in mind. So with regard to international class, you might remember that I said there's sort of like no international trademark. Every trademark is country-based. Well, international class is not that. What that means is we as the United States have agreements with other countries around the world that goods and services will be divided up into 45 different international classes. Chemicals go in one, medical goods go in another, electronics go in one, clothing goes into another, paper products go in one, hand tools in one, power tools in another, vehicles in another, right? And same with services. There's so they're all divided up. And so when you apply to register your trademark, you have to tell us what are the goods and services you use with your trademark. Which ones do you want to include in your application? And you tell us, I'm using, Jason's as a brand name for my t-shirts. And I'm also using it as a brand name for my, tax preparation services. Okay, well, clothing is in class 25, tax prep is probably in 36, class 36. And so that's 2 international classes that happen to appear as part of your application. Therefore, it's 250 times 2. Notice your filing fee is not based upon the number of goods and services in your application. It's based upon the number of international classes. The great thing to keep in mind is that for the most part, you don't have to worry about an international class, okay? The only time it matters is in determining your filing fee. And if you're using TEAS Plus, the form does it for you. Please do not stress about international class. If you go through and you pick out the things, the form will actually say, oh, this is in class blah, this is in class blah, this is in class blah, right? And it'll calculate for you what your filing fee is going to be. And if you're like, whoa, that's too much, Jason, I don't want to pay $500. I've only got $250 that I want to put towards registration. Well, you could go back in and delete out some of the things that are in the additional class and only go forward with goods or services that appear in that one international class. So that's kind of how that works. We obviously don't have time to go into filing, the whole filing thing. So as you can see, here's the pre-filing checklist. You'll get a PDF of this slide deck. You should be able to grab the link from that. This talks about all the sort of like the 3 main things that you're going to want to think about before you file. So I'd encourage you to download that, take a look at that. Also, quick reminder that it's up to you to enforce your trademark rights. All right. Once you register with us, you're not done. All right. You have to enforce your rights. And so that means you're probably going to work with an attorney in case you got to send a cease and desist letter to some guy out there who's infringing on your rights, or maybe you have to sue an infringing user. And the other thing to keep in mind is that you must file post-registration maintenance documents with us. This is the amazing thing about a trademark registration. It can last forever. So long as you continue to use your trademark in commerce, so across state lines, and you file the documents with us that you need to, your trademark registration can last to infinity. All right. You can pass it down to your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids, and your business can continue. I'm not going to talk about exactly what they are, but I just want you to be kind of aware of them. The first one is due between the 5th and 6th year after registration, and then again, every 10 years thereafter. And so I talk about it in other presentations that I give. So if you want to learn more about it, let me know. And I can also direct you to a full hour that I do on this stuff. Also, a quick reminder that your information in the database is public. So that means that anybody can go in there and look at it. So it means that there are companies that scrape our database and then they send you letters, solicitations. Some are legit, probably most are not. Some of them are trying to defraud you. They're trying to trick you into paying money that you do not need to pay. They're trying to scare you into thinking that you have to be on some private European trademark registry. I don't even know what that would be. Some of them are like, here, you owe 4,000 euros. No? Okay. So if you're worried about something that you get in the mail after you've applied to file, you can always check your application documents in our database at any time, totally free. And if you don't see the same thing that you got in the mail in the database, in your file, then you can ignore that thing and move on. All right, very quickly, how to find help. And then I want to get to your questions. So we have lots of great information on our website, uspto.gov. Just go to the Trademark Basics section and you'll find some great information there. A lot of the things that I talked about today. We also have our Trademark Basics Bootcamp. This is what I'm doing later today in about an hour and 10 minutes. That one's going to be about searching in our database. Bootcamp is an 8-week cycle. It's totally free. It's pretty much every Tuesday for like a 2-month period at 2 p.m. And it takes we go through and we talk through all the different things about the registration process. So if you want to learn more about filing and registration, next week we're going to talk about those application requirements. The week after that, I literally walk you through the T's plus form. And then after that, we talk about some things for after you file, for post-registration, if you want to learn more about that. And then a final week, week 8, is a question and answer period. I bring in a couple of experts from the office, and we just answer your questions for like 90 minutes. So if you have trademark questions, that's a great way to get them answered. So I'd encourage you to sign up for Trademark Basics Bootcamp. You can see the link there down at the bottom. You can also just go to uspto.gov, do a quick search on Trademark Basics Bootcamp, get the link, and then you sign up in Eventbrite, and you're good to go. And you'll see me very, very soon. We also have our Trademark Assistance Center. There are customer service folks. If you have general questions about trademarks or want to find something on the site, please give them a call, shoot them an email. They'd love to work with you and help you find stuff on our site. Just keep in mind that they cannot provide any legal advice. Same thing with me. No one at the USPTO can give you legal advice. If you want legal advice, we recommend you work with an attorney. We are not allowed to recommend them, but we do recommend you might want to think about working with one. And also keep in mind, there's a difference between a trademark attorney and a trademark filing company. If you look online, you might see a lot of these companies pop up. You type in trademark registration in Google, you'll see a lot of these companies which are saying that they can register your trademark for X small amount of money. Be very, very careful of those. Some of them are absolutely scams. We've tried to shut down a couple that have popped up and then have been fleecing people for a lot of money. And then there are others which are perhaps more legitimate, but be aware that if you're based in the United States, you do not have to have someone help you with your application. Specifically, you don't have to have an attorney help you. You can do it on your own, okay? And because of that, in a lot of ways, these filing companies, there isn't much. It's up to you what you want to do, okay? I just want to say that right now. I'm not trying to disparage anybody or anybody's business. I'm just saying that you could file an application on your own if you take the time to learn the things that you need to learn, right? All you're doing with some of these filing companies is paying them money to fill out a form that you can fill out on your own. So it's up to you to decide if that's something you want or not. Totally up to you. But if you are going to work with somebody and pay someone to help you with your application, please make sure that you're paying money to work with an attorney, okay? Make sure there's an attorney on staff who's going to be working with you and reviewing your application. So, all right, so I will kind of get off my small soapbox there, and I will answer any questions that you might have. What do we got?
I'm trying to unmute myself here. We have several questions. I will start. I think some of these maybe had been answered in the presentation, but we'll go over them real quick. Okay. Are common law trademark rights registered or self-initiated?
Self-initiated.
Right. Is there any ability to get a waiver of registration fees?
No. Yeah, no. The sort of like the best that we can do in terms of like trying to help you financially is with the T's plus form. Look, I get it, $250. That's not cheap. Okay, I mean it's cheaper, but it's not cheap. So I get it. That's a problem, especially as you're starting up a business. But keep in mind that fee is actually an examination fee. Like it's a filing fee that goes towards the examination process. Actually, I don't think it even covers it, to be honest with you. So that's what the fee is for. It is to essentially pay for the examination work that is done by the examining attorney to determine whether your trademark can register. So that would be perhaps one reason why it can't be waived. It's a good question, though.
Thanks. With all the information easily exchanged online globally, how is a trademark registered in the US protected?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
I think they mean like if you register a trademark in the US, I'm assuming maybe, is there any protection like internationally or globally?
If you want to protect it globally, you need to protect it in other countries in which you might be operating. Now, look, that's hard, okay? It's hard for big companies to be able to do that, to be able to protect and get in, especially because different countries register trademarks differently. So it might be that in that country it's first to file. So someone tries to slip in front of you, right, and register your trademark, and then try and sort of like hold you hostage to right, or say, oh, you can't operate in our country because I already have the trademark registration for it in this country. So yeah, that's a problem, and that's why it's very important to work with an experienced trademark practitioner, somebody who's been doing this for a while and can give you advice on here's the best way to protect yourself internationally, because registering here is not enough. Like if you want to work internationally, you're going to want protection in other countries, and so an attorney is going to be able to help you do that. And look, if you're at a point where you're operating internationally, that's awesome. Good for you. Like that means your business is really kind of growing. So hopefully at that point, you'll have somebody established that you're working with who can help you protect your trademark portfolio, as it's often referred to.
Thanks. I have another question. It's kind of related. I think you've sort of answered it, but I'm just going to say, they also pointed out the problems given that we're in a global market where so much gets done online and purchases are made internationally. Is there any chance this will change so that there's blanket global protection?
That's a great question. I certainly cannot answer that officially as the USPTO. Me personally, just Jason talking out loud here, I think it'd be very difficult to do. Just because, no country wants to be told what to do. And we all have very specific ways of registering trademarks. Here in the United States, it's based upon use because that's very important to us. We want to make sure that the person who registers a trademark is the one who is actually using it and not somebody else who's just like trying to like park a trademark somewhere and to like use that as a business, right? So that's how we do it in this country. But there might be other countries where it's different. So trying to convince that country to give up what they've now been doing for 100 years or longer, hey, that's going to be very difficult. So look, are you kidding me? It'd be great if there's like, oh, you file one place, you're protected around the world. Awesome, right? So I can certainly see the benefit of that. But I think practically it would be a very difficult thing to do. Can't say it can't be done. But it would be certainly not anything that would happen soon.
Thank you. Under common law, if a trademark is solely used online, how would the geographic area be determined?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, the internet kind of blows a lot of that out of the water. So the sort of difference between or the sort of geographic limitation of common law, and maybe that doesn't apply too much anymore because of that. So that means like a lot of people, as soon as you are operating online, in a lot of ways, you're operating across state lines, which means you're at that point, hey, that's interstate commerce. And so that means, hey, now's a great time for you to file that application with us, right? And protect your trademark through federal registration because you're already operating across state lines. So pre-internet, perhaps there was more of a difference between common law rights and being able to sort of register federally. So it's a great point. I mean, in a lot of ways, like I try and give that example as a way for people to understand the differences between the two. But you're absolutely right that in today's modern world, look, you create an Etsy shop and you're selling your handmade goods to people around the country, if not around the world. Yeah, sure. You're already sort of operating across state lines, and that's good because in order to register with us, you must be using your trademark in interstate commerce. You can apply, to register before you are. If you only have intra-state, right, only inside your state usage, you can apply to register with us, but you'll never be able to actually register it until you start using it across state lines. So if your first sale is across state lines, yeah, right on, man. And so that means you're already in interstate commerce. So when you apply to register with us, you can say, hey, USPTO, I am claiming my Section 1A use in commerce basis because I'm already using it across state lines.
Great, thanks. We have quite a few questions. I don't know if you have time to stick around and answer more where it was.
Yeah, I can stick around for a few more minutes. I'll have to disappear at some point, but yeah.
Yes, of course. Okay. Thank you. If this is kind of related to the website, if a website provides content for free, is the domain and a related name something that can be trademarked? Does use have to be a dollar transaction? Or yeah.
Use does not have to be a dollar transaction. It can be, because if you think about it, nonprofits and charities and things like that, those, you can absolutely register those trademarks. If you happen to be a nonprofit, you could register your trademarks. Doesn't have to mean that you're actually selling something. So yeah, you can provide things for free. The goods just have to be sold or transported across state lines for it to trigger interstate commerce. And if you wanted to provide free services to people, sure, you could do that as well online. So I just want to point out though, to be clear, domain name registration and trademark registration are two separate things. A domain name can be a trademark, which can be registered with us, but it doesn't have to be. All right. So if you think about 20 years ago, Amazon.com, clearly that was a domain name. It was also their trademark, right? And they had protected Amazon.com. Everybody back in the early 2000s was protecting something.com, right? But so in that case, a domain name can function as both a domain name and as a trademark, but it doesn't have to. So just because you have a domain name, remember, that doesn't mean you have a trademark. It only is if you use it as a trademark, then you might want to protect it through trademark registration. But those are really two different things. Same thing with a business name. Just because you've registered a name in order to do business in Virginia, that does not mean that that is your trademark or that you have to use it as a trademark. You can if you want to. Like if I want to do, Jason's LLC, fine. That could be my business name in Virginia, but it doesn't mean that I have to use that as my trademark. I could have a really super awesome other thing that I use as my trademark and this really boring thing that I use as my business name.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. About your boot camp that you have coming up in an hour or so. Is there a cost for that?
Nope, totally free.
Great.
The only cost is you have to put up with me for 90 minutes, okay?
And then we had a couple more questions about the fees again for filing. I'm going to try to wrap them kind of together, but besides the 250 or 350, are there additional fees involved to file? And what is the average cost of obtaining a trademark? Maybe you can answer both.
Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can tease that out a little bit. One thing we didn't really get a chance to talk about today is basis, your filing basis. Now, as you might remember, I just mentioned in order to apply, you don't have to be using your trademark yet. So that means you could apply under what is known as the intent to use basis. There's also the use in commerce basis, okay? Your filing fee for both of those, depending on the basis, regardless of the basis, is going to be the same. However, if you file under intent to use, which says, hey, USPTO, I'm not using it across state lines yet, but I have a bona fide intent to do so within the next 3 to 4 years, that's fine. But in order to actually register, you're going to have to amend your application over to a use in commerce basis. That amendment will cost you money. Okay. Not a whole lot, but it's, I think it's like $100 per international class in order to amend. Yeah. So it's $100 in order per international class to amend from the intent to use over to the use in commerce. So that could be an additional fee that you pay a year or so later, maybe a couple years later. If you file for extensions of time to file, the statement of use, that's what that amendment is called. That's $150 per international class. You can file up to 5 times with that. So if you do that, that could be an additional fee. But for the most part, you pay your filing fee, and then there's probably not going to be a whole lot of any extra costs that are associated with it until you get to the registration part. And at that point, you're going to pay the post-registration fees between the 5th and 6th year, and then every 10 years. So it's not like a situation where we're like, hey, you filed, okay, now I'm going to gouge you for a few more. Now we're going to get, no, that's not how it works. So it's only if there's something that you would have to pay, but that's not really part of the process unless you're having to amend from intent to use over to the use in commerce.
Great, thank you. And I have a few questions. People are asking me about the registration for the boot camp later. I put the link here in the chat. So if anyone wants to register, Tamika shared it earlier, and then I also just shared it again. So check that out. Good. How do I make sure my new business is not infringing on an existing company's rights to make sure they can't sue me?
Hey, great. Good question. A lot of that has to do with doing a clearance search. So you're going to look in our database, you're going to look online. we would recommend that you work with an attorney who can do a deeper search for you, to do that comprehensive clearance search, because you want to know who else is out there. Thank you for asking that question. I think it's incredibly important, because the last thing that you want to do is start to build up your business and be successful and all realize, oh, wait, there's this other person who's out here who has stronger rights than I do. Now, all of a sudden, you've got to rebrand. Your customers have to relearn this new sort of thing. Any products or materials that you have that brand name on them, you're gonna have to destroy that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of costs that could be involved in rebranding yourself. So yes, please do that research beforehand. I can't give you all sorts of specifics on do this, do this, do this, do this. Mostly because I'm not allowed to give legal advice, and also that's not my area of expertise. Okay, I've been working for the USPTO, dealing with federal trademark registration for my entire career, and there are experienced trademark attorneys on the outside of our agency who deal with all of that stuff. And my guess is somebody at the SBDC is going to be able to help you along with some of those things as well, because I know that's, I'm sure that's part of some of the business advice that they provide.
Yeah. Let's see here. I have another one ready. Can the applicant name or owner name be changed to applicant's business LLC name instead of their personal name, I guess, when they file?
Yep, absolutely. That happens all the time. Somebody's like just starting off a business in their garage or from around the kitchen table, they file in their own name. And then eventually they form an LLC or a corporation, whatever. Yes, you can absolutely transfer those rights from you to your company. And the reason you can is because these are what are known as intellectual property rights. Okay, it's like a property right. Unlike real property, like a house or land or whatever, this is called intellectual property. And a trademark is, it's a property right. And that means you can sell it, you can rent it, you can license it out, you can pass it down through inheritance. It is a property right which can be transferred to others. So you can transfer it from yourself over to your business.
All right, we kind of have a related question. What happens to a slogan associated with a company that is no longer in business? For example, the Sims retail store slogan, "An educated consumer is our best customer."
So it's an excellent question. Again, I have to be very careful here because I cannot tell you, oh yeah, you're fine. So really what that means is anytime there's somebody asked a similar sort of question about like, hey, can I use or register this thing that somebody else have been using? The answer is really, it depends. And what it depends on is the research that you do. So it might be that slogan is no longer in use by anyone out there for related goods and services. Let's say it's been more than 3 years, which is traditionally what's considered the abandonment. Like anything after 3 years, it's typically considered abandoned. So it might be that it's kind of abandoned and nobody really has any rights in it, and it can work for you. Okay, but just because somebody isn't necessarily using it any longer, it doesn't mean that they still don't have rights in it. So it could be that someone, say, for example, just decided, you know what, I'm done with federal registration. I'm going to rely on my common law rights. Okay, they might, or they might only use it occasionally for more than just a sort of like minimal use. An example perhaps would be a lot of times sports teams will use throwback jerseys and throwback logos and things like that. Yes, some of it, I'm sure, is to be able to sell new product, right? But in some ways too, they're also keeping use going. So it's not just like a minimal use just to keep trademark rights alive, but they are actually using those things as trademarks. So it's possible that somebody had been using a slogan and they only use it occasionally now, but they still have rights in it. And so therefore you'd want to be very careful about trying to use something that somebody else had been trying to use because they might still have rights in it. The only thing I will say with regard to that, though, is remember the two-part of the likelihood of confusion analysis is not just about whether the trademarks are similar, but it's about the relatedness of the goods and services. So it's possible that two identical trademarks exist out there so long as the goods and services are unrelated. The example I used to give is Dove. Dove as a trademark, some of two identical trademarks. Some of you thought of soap, some of you thought of chocolate bars or chocolate ice cream bars or something like that, right? those can coexist in the marketplace, even though they are used by completely, they're identical, but they're used for unrelated goods or services. So it's possible that the slogan, even if somebody else is still kind of using it, if they're using it for one thing, if they're using it for gardening gloves and you are going to be using it for, I don't know, tax preparation services, then maybe it's fine. That's that likelihood of confusion and analysis that has to be done. Great question.
Thank you. Can you explain again on what self-initiated is? In other words, are you doing something particular at your local government center, like where you begin your business registration? What does self-initiated mean?
Start using it. I think is really, and again, I have to be a little bit careful here because, again, as I said, my expertise is in federal trademark law, and common law is state-based. So I'm sure there's an attorney in Virginia who can tell you, oh, let me explain to you the history of common law trademark rights here in Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so that person could probably do a better job of explaining what all you need to do. But for the most part, trademark rights are created when you begin to use something. Now, some states might want you to always make sure you're putting a TM or an SM after it to make sure that the public is aware, but not all states do that. So oftentimes the rights, we just, because we can't get hyper specific about things, and it's going to depend on the laws in your state. For the most part, it's start to use it, you begin to grow your rights. And that's because common law rights are based upon state law. Could be case law, but most often it's a statute, a state statute. So that might be a good place to look if you want to learn more about it. Maybe sort of like look up what the laws are in Virginia with regard to common law trademarks and if you have to do anything at all.
Great, thank you. Could you mention what the difference is between a trademark and a copyright?
Oh yeah, sure. That's a great question. And there's overlap between the two of them, but they really are protecting two different types of intellectual property. So as we know, trademark is legal protection for a brand, right? So here we're mostly concerned with identification of source, indicating source. So this is really like a business sort of brand name, slogan, logo type thing. Copyrights, on the other hand, are protection for artistic works like songs or movies, books, paintings, sculptures, photographs, software. So it's when you have an idea and you affix it into a tangible medium that creates a copyright. So there's no ownership of an idea, but there can be ownership or a copyright when you have expressed that idea and put it into a tangible medium, whether you wrote it on a sheet of paper, you typed it up on your computer, you recorded it into your phone, right? It's some sort of thing has captured it so that somebody else can experience it, right? So that is creating a copyright. Now, where that comes into play is, and there's sometimes overlap between the two of them, is like, say that you're a graphic designer, right? And you have created this artistic work, which also happens to be a logo. So you as the designer might have copyrights in the thing you've created, and you might license that out to somebody else through an exclusive license for them to use as a trademark. Think about Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse exists and is protected by copyright through Disney, but Mickey Mouse is also used as a trademark. So every time you see Mickey Mouse, you're like, oh yeah, amusement parks and movies and TV shows and everything else that Disney does, right? So there is absolutely overlap, but they're really protecting two different things. One is an indicator of source, and one is protection for an artistic or creative idea or expression of that idea.
Great, thank you. Maybe we have time for one more.
Yeah, one more. I got it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think more just have a couple. What was that?
I got to wipe my forehead before I log on to the next.
Yeah. We just kind of have a couple sort of related to what resources are available to file now and sort of, for startups, you offer paid services through any legal businesses that you can refer us to. I know you mentioned that before, but could you talk about sort of what things might be available?
So we can't offer any legal services. However, the American Bar Association often has what are referred to as pro bono resources that are available. I would also recommend you check out INTA. It's called INTA, their pro bono clearinghouse program. So there you have international trademark attorneys who are volunteering their time to work with business owners who meet certain income eligibility requirements. So that's another option, the INTA Pro Bono Clearinghouse. And the other thing I would recommend, if you have time and meet income eligibility requirements, you might be able to work with one of our law school clinics. We as the USPTO have partnered with law schools around the country, over 60 of them, 60 at this time. And so the law school creates a clinic. And so you have a trademark attorney and some law students who are volunteering their time to work with you on your trademark application. So every one of them has their own eligibility types of things. They have their own, docket of people. I've heard that they're very popular and so they're very busy. So sometimes they can't take everybody. But if you go to our website, do a search on Law School Clinic, you'll find the Law School Clinic page, and you'll see this huge list of all of the law schools. You'll also see where they're located in the country, whether they cover patents, whether they cover trademarks, whether they cover both. And also whether they only take local folks or whether they'll take people from around the country. And there are some folks, some clinics will take you no matter where you're from. So that would be another suggestion I might have about something to check out.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for your questions today. Jason, thank you for the awesome presentation.
You're welcome.
Lots of information, very informative. I just wanted to let everybody know who's still on today. You'll receive an email with a link to the recording and evaluation and to the slides. If you'd like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiaspdc.org/training. I put a link there in the chat for you to check out. Be sure to check out the next webinar in this series next Tuesday, Copyright Basics and Considerations for Entrepreneurs. So maybe if you didn't get your questions answered today, you can come back and check that out. And we had 2 others that you can find on our website as well in the past couple weeks. So all of our resources are meant to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors, and you can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiaspdc.org or via our website. I also put that email in the chat. Thank you again for attending, and we hope to see everybody on the next session.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.